welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Shayna Kataya. I'm the Director of Student Services for Pittsford Schools, and we're thrilled to have so many people out tonight, and thank you so much for your patience and flexibility in rescheduling for the tornado that wasn't a tornado. So when the wind and rain warning came earlier today, I was like, we're doing it no matter what. So luckily we're trying so far. So thank you for being here. If you have not been to one of our power hours before, this is something that came out of our equity action plan several years ago. And it was really when our Board of Education asked us to try and continue to find ways to bring topics of interest to our families and community members and have ongoing ways to be able to interact and bring information throughout the year. Tonight's is going to be a little bit different of a format. We stick right to our hour timeline. Typically, we give you some information and we have time for questions and answers. Tonight is a little different because our Board of Education is going to be making some decisions shortly about what our distraction-free environment will look like in our schools, specific to cell phone use for our students. And so they wanted to use this opportunity to start with this group to get some feedback from parents and guardians around what they think that could look like for us. So before we go ahead and get started, just wanted to thank our Board of Education for continuing to support us in bringing these events to you, and to our superintendent, Mike Piro, and our building and district administrators who are always here taking time out during a very busy time of year, and especially to our panel tonight. We have Leilani Thompson, who is our Student and Family Engagement Coordinator. She's a district-based social worker who has a wealth of knowledge in a variety of areas, and is going to be talking a little bit about the social and emotional impact we see on students with their cell phone use. We have Principal Melissa Julian from Mendon High School, Principal Josh Walker from here at Hawkins Road Middle School, who's always hosting us for our power hours, so thank you, and Maria Hill, who is our Coordinator for Social and Emotional Learning. So for this evening, we are going to do things, as I said, a little bit differently. We're going to talk about what we've learned. You'll see some of these books floating around. Many of you have probably read the book, The Anxious Generation. There's a lot of great texts out there about the impact of social media and cell phones. We brought some extra copies that we're happy to loan out and encourage you to pass along or pass back to us, and we'll make sure that others can get them. It's an interesting book, and it can make you anxious also as parents, as I know it made me as a parent of two teen and preteen children myself. So as we've been doing that learning, our Board of Education has been doing a year-long book study around cell phone use, including working with the Monroe County School Boards Association, working with our building administrators and our district staff around what they're seeing in our schools. And they're really committed to making some policy changes around a bell-to-bell policy for what will allow for cell phone use. You may have also seen that we're learning more and more about what the governor is proposing. We're still waiting to see what the budget will entail and what will be in there in terms of specifics for schools. But they are also proposing, as part of the governor's budget, a bell-to-bell ban in schools for cell phones. There may be some choice in there for schools and what that would look like, so each school would create their own policy. So what we want to do tonight is get as much feedback as we can around if we have choices in these situations. It would help us to know where some of our community members lie in that. So that's really our goal for tonight. Share a little bit about what we've learned, talk about what our current practices are. We'll talk a little bit about K through 5, but specifically at the middle and high school levels, what we've seen, what we've changed over the past couple of years, and how that's working, what's not working. And then talking about other things that we've seen across the nation. We've been doing research and locally. And then most importantly, we'll certainly answer any questions that you have, but we want to gather your feedback. And some people are more comfortable than others standing up and sharing, so we have a little task for you to complete before you leave, where you'll actually be able to, every person here will be able to have an opportunity to share kind of anonymously, and then there'll be an opportunity to share any other questions or concerns that you have that you would like the board and school administration to consider. That was a lot of information. Let's see if this is working. Oh, okay. Okay, so with that, we're going to start with a little bit of an overview around the anxious generation. There's a couple other resources that we want to make you aware of. When we were reading in some of the comments people made in the RSVPs, there was a handful of people who were interested in really specifics on how to limit within the home cell phone use or access to social media, what you can change on your servers, things like that. All of our power hours are recorded and posted, and we did a whole one earlier this year that had a lot of great specific information and some websites you can go to. We'll send that back out to you, some of those websites based on your email address after today. Certainly the anxious generation is a text that we've been really using as a foundation. And there's a couple other areas as well. You've looked at, there's now a series of documentaries called Screenagers. So there was one that came out that was really popular. Several more have followed, and they have a podcast that's really great because if you just want 20 minutes, you're driving somewhere and you want to hear something, they have probably 40 or so episodes. So you can go in and see all sorts of different Screenagers podcast episodes that might be of interest to you. At the end here, we're also going to share some information that was shared by one of our parents around the Wait Until 8th program and pledge that parents are taking. So we did print off a couple of the flyers that they have, so those are on the table over here. But this is the concept really before students get to high school of parents taking a pledge that they're not going to give their children smartphones until they get into high school. The cool thing about it is when you make your pledge, as soon as 10 people, correct me if I'm wrong, if I messed this up, as soon as 10 people within your child's school building make that same pledge, it goes active, and then you get the information about those other families just in terms of their email address so you can reach out. And it's just a way to help empower parents in saying that you're not alone in making these decisions. Hopefully that movement is continuing to grow. There's also a Facebook page, Wait Until 8 Pittsford, for parents who want to just get more information on that. So the website is waituntil8.org.
And it's 10 families within a grade at a school.
Thank you. 10 families within the grade band at a school. So if you're third grade at Jefferson Road, you need 10 families in there. And we have several grade levels across all of our schools who do have those active pledges out there. So if you want more information about that, they also have resources on that site about talking to your child about cell phones, smartphones, going back to not smartphones, ways to communicate with your children that don't involve smartphone use. So those are just some different resources we'll share with you. And with that, we're going to move to Mrs. Hill, who's going to share a little bit of information, some national statistics around cell phone use and the anxious generation study.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. This is such an important topic, and I'm so happy that there are so many of you here to have this conversation with us today. So, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. This is a book that we've had several book studies across the district. Mendon High School did some, I think last summer. Our Board of Education has been reading this book. Our Resiliency Champions, which is a small group of counselors and administrators and mental health providers across the district. We've also done a book study as well as professional development we are offering this summer for our staff. So, has anyone read this book? So, it's really an amazing book, and the whole premise of it is that basically there was this very large, rapid growth of technology, and included in that is the overprotective parenting combined with that rapid growth of technology has led to basically a play-based childhood that we all had is now a phone-based childhood. And so I just have a few little bullets to talk about what some of the points that Jonathan Haidt makes in the book. Smartphones and social media, basically it leads to social deprivation, emotional dysregulation, and cognitive fragmentation. What that means is he's talking about how our reality might not all be the same anymore because we have such constant access to different information, and the algorithms are set up to continue to feed us the same thing that we already are reading about. So some people have a different truth than others. So that's kind of what that cognitive fragmentation means, and we all deal with that. The overprotective parenting, this stems from safety. Parents have grown to be very protective of their children. We all have been, especially in this digital age. We need a lot of supervision and just making sure that they are doing the right thing and going to the right websites and using it appropriately. But also what's happening is that kids are underdeveloped for their life skills to be prepared for adulthood. And if you read this book, which I highly suggest you read it, there are lots of examples of the different developmental milestones that students and kids are missing because of this new technology age. And it's leading to a lot of mental health problems. The play-based childhood versus the phone-based childhood. This is very similar to the overprotective parenting. They all kind of overlap a lot. But again, students and kids are spending so much time on their phones that they are missing those developmental milestones. They are missing out with time with their friends. They are missing out on free play where they explore and learn how to solve problems for themselves and be safe for themselves. So a good quote that I liked from the book was, "We are forever elsewhere." So we are very distracted all the time now, and that has kind of changed the brains of our new generation. So we know that there's been a decline in health, and it's not just mental health. We do have a lot of anxiety and depression, and suicide rates are all going up because of these pieces that we just talked about. They are not hitting their milestones. They are lonely. They are isolated. The students, they're not socially integrating with the other kids and with adults. So we also start to see social patterns changing. We don't see kids playing together. They are all on their phones talking, even if they're at the same table. We've all seen that. And we do it too sometimes. Role models change as well because of those social dynamics shifting and students not being with appropriate role models for adults or students, as well as the sleep patterns, because we know our kids are on their phones pretty late, and it does affect their sleep. So I apologize, I can't really see this very well from here. But this is one of, in this book, he provides a lot of data around what we're seeing across the world. It's not just the United States. Daily time with friends by age group, you can see that the youngest age group, I can't see the numbers, has a huge steady decline, and that gray band is where they are marking, where Jonathan Haidt is marking the rapid growth in technology. So it's the mid to early 2000s, where we had the smartphones came out, and then the front-facing cameras, so then the selfies, and then the social media, and the likes, and it's just this snowball of really toxic things that our kids are all being exposed to. So this is the daily time with friends, and you can see that because of this big growth in technology, we see a rapid decline in that piece for students. Anxiety, this one is another one that we're seeing a lot of increase in, and a lot of that is due to the social media. And the studies and the data show that a lot of it is the females are having the worst time with anxiety. And just, again, the constant disruptions and interruptions from their phones and the social media piece causes a lot of anxiety. And then here are suicide rates. And again, there's that gray band where we see the growth in technology. And again, that's up a lot for boys and girls. So in the book, some of the recommendations that he gives to kind of remedy some of this problem, and this Generation Z is now in this phone-based childhood era. So what he recommends is outdoor activities, so kids having physical activity with other kids, with that social interaction piece. Another recommendation is to limit the screen time, which I know we all try to do, just monitoring it, setting boundaries, and making sure that our kids know those expectations as well as the students when they're in school. And then the other one is just to foster independence. And this goes back to a lot of that overprotective parenting. We want our kids to be independent. We want them to learn those skills because we don't want them to be an adult and be in a situation and not have any idea how to interact with people or solve a conflict. So that is one of the recommendations that he also gave.
All right, so we're going to turn over. Thank you so much, Maria, for that overview. And I was just saying we were away on a trip for spring break, and I have a teenage daughter, and we were in a beautiful place, and it was very Instagram-worthy place, and the amount of anxiety that was shown to get a perfect picture in this place was kind of shocking. And so just those different statistics, really, you can see it. And at first I said, this isn't that big of a deal, just take a picture and let's go. But her anxiety was making me anxious, and so now I'm taking all these pictures, trying to get a picture, and I just said I feel sad for you that this is the situation, and then you look around, there's lots of teenagers doing the same thing, and then they're seeing all these beautiful pictures with probably a whole stressed family behind them that you don't get to see. So it's something that we're definitely seeing, and I'm sure all of you are seeing it to an extent too. So thank you. With that, we're going to turn over to our principals to share. We have had some shifts in our practices over the past couple of years, especially in our secondary schools. I will say in our elementary schools, we don't allow students to have phones in school, and we have asked to not send the wearables in with kids, or to make sure if they're there, that if they need them for after school or whatever it is for communication, that they don't have internet access on them. And to put them away during the day. So we have needed a couple reminders throughout the year, but for the most part, we haven't seen the level of cell phone use at elementary schools as of yet. So with that, turn over to our secondary leaders.
So just to play off of Shayna's story for a second, every year our global studies students write me a list of demands of what they would like to see in school as part of their learning how to advocate, and then I meet with them and talk through some of those pieces. And this last list was vastly different than any other I've had before, because they asked for things like full-length mirrors, so they could be able to check and do selfies in the bathroom. They asked for things like more charging stations for their phones. So it was just bad. In the past, I've gotten things like decor, or better chairs, always hot lunches, different lunches are on there. So it's interesting to compare those lists. So it's a very different generation from what we've had in the past, even 7 years ago when I started. And because of that, we have changed our practices at the high school level around devices. So a few years ago, we were seeing a big increase in the amount of devices being used during the school day, specifically after the COVID time period, where students were really forced to isolate in the lunchrooms and in the classrooms when they were in smaller groups. And we took a look at that practice, and we knew it was not helpful to students. So what we started to do is we brought together a team of teachers and administrators and met over the summer and looked at research from all across the world. And we came up with our practice, which is during instructional time, they are often away unless explicitly stated by a teacher to be used. And then they could still use it during their lunch period, free period in the hallways, because as we know, these are devices, they're addicted to their devices, so cutting it out completely was not going to be helpful as we dealt with the challenge of minimizing the use. It works for the most part. What we have seen is our senior group has been the hardest to break them of this habit, because they were the ones who had it most consistently during that time. In addition, we also introduced one-to-one devices during that time. In our current 9th grade, I would say, are the best users of the one-to-one devices, Most of our upper class students will turn to their phone before they turn to their one-to-one device, especially our seniors, and will in fact write an entire essay on their phone, which blows our minds. We don't know how they do it, but that's their preferred method right now. So that leads to the conversation then of, what are you doing on your phone? And oftentimes they will show you they are writing, but they also have 17 other tabs open, right? Because they're multitasking because they think they can. The reality is their brains are not wired to do that yet. Well, their brains are changing. It's not adept yet at what they're trying to do. So we, every year, look at this practice and we continue to get more and more stringent on it. For example, we've introduced cell phone case holders at both schools where they're in the doorway. So when you go to open house, you'll see them like as the students walk in, they're assigned a number or they're assigned a row. They have to put their device in there. We encourage kids to put them in their lockers, but no one uses their lockers at the high school level. That's why you see their bags. They carry around 40, 50-pound bags. They're all gonna have back problems, but that's another thing. So they'll become a chiropractor is what I tell a number of them. But they are adhering more to some of the changes. It's just very hard for them to not be on their device regularly during the day. And I'm gonna be honest with you, they throw you under the bus all the time. They will say it's their parent texting them, it's their parent calling them, it's their parent, and they will show us that sometimes it is the parent that is texting or calling. So we would ask again to please don't do that during the day. If you need them, we can give them a message. We have phones everywhere. But that's generally what we're seeing at the high school level. And we are not seeing a decrease in bullying or harassment with devices because it happens regularly. And the biggest problem is that they will leave their classroom, take them to the bathroom, and take pictures or send messages or do something in the bathroom. As much as we're trying to stop that, it's hard.
Excuse me, what do you mean by a one-to-one device?
The one-to-one device, it's a computer that the district provides to a student to use.
Oh, wow.
Thank you for the question.
Yes?
So when a student enters the classroom, we ask them, the teachers will ask them to put it in the holder so that it's not distracting in or near them. It's just for the classroom. I will share with you that we have a number of students who have gotten around that by bringing in a phone that no longer works, a phone that is a fake phone, or what they call a burner phone. They have burner phones. So these are all really very real obstacles we face in our level. They're very smart. I'm just going to let you know. So if you have an old iPhone, like a version like 3, they brought it to school. They are also using their calculator holders right now to put their cell phones in and putting that calculator skin over the cell phone. And we've seen an increase in cheating across Monroe County as they do that. They're very smart.
It's a little different in the middle schools.
Yeah.
They're not carving phones out of bars of soap and things like that. So I'll speak a little bit as a parent as well. Like, not only do I have the pleasure of working with these kids between the ages of 10 and 14, which we saw some of the statistics in there, I'm the parent of a 17-year-old. And that has been, who went through middle school through the pandemic, for those of you that have juniors. So that has been an interesting management at home. Reading that book gave me anxiety. I read parts with him. He had opinions that were different, but it was a really, really good discussion. So if you take anything away from here, I'm not gonna rob the finale that we have, but like having the discussion at home, open and honest, is so important. It really, really is. And I'll comment on the multitasking. Watching my son studying for an exam with YouTube on his phone, the laptop going, and he's in a discussion in his ear. That overwhelms me. They're studying. I mean, it's just how they can do things, but it's still a lot. It's still a lot. So it's about that management piece. So at the middle schools, as you can see up there, we're the same. It's away during the day. We do not have students that we don't have them use it in the hallway, in the commons. in study halls. There was a very brief experiment we did here coming out of the pandemic where we allowed the 8th graders the privilege of having it in a study hall. That lasted half a year because we saw them like this. And it was this room, really, that spurred that. As the kids were all spread out, and we would come in, and usually in study hall, some kids might be working together, doing little small study groups, but just the isolation was there. And so we just got rid of that. They didn't like it at first, but that's okay. It's okay if they didn't like it at first. We also saw, and I'm going to connect this a little bit with the laptops, the one-to-one devices. Again, this room was responsible for it. It became the new thing. So not all middle schoolers have cell phones. It is increasing, but not all of them. The laptops became the connection. They could find online chess, which I never want to discourage kids from playing chess, but they're playing chess, but guess what that game has? Chat features. And then they're chatting back and forth, and they're chatting with the kid that's up in math class while they're in lunch. So we got rid of, you cannot use the laptop in the cafeteria at all, which our tech folks were very happy because it was less mashed potatoes in the keys. Instantly, we saw an increase in that positive interaction, that communication, kids engaging with one another. We've got some board games over there that they like to play. I would highly recommend not Risk at the middle school level. But the kids got to talking more, and that's really, I think, a big thing we could take away from that book. We also have the rule where if it's under a teacher's direction, it's okay to use, but with those laptops, we see that being used less and less and less. Sometimes they'll make their iMovies for like a skit or something for their different classes, but we have seen a decline in that. And again, as Melissa said, we can't be so ignorant to think that they might not be sneaking into the bathroom and doing the quick texts or the phone calls. And what we've seen at the middle school level isn't so much the things during the day, but as parents, you know what I'm talking about when I say sometimes we see the outside coming in. And it's because those students can't get away from it, that instant access. And they're always connected to whatever, far be it from middle school to be involved in drama, but something like that may have happened over the weekend. Where before kids could go home and they were done, now it's nonstop. So that's a little bit of middle school.
Thank you. I have the pleasure of having both a middle schooler and a high schooler. So they are very different experiences, and I know as parents it's hard. We were talking a little bit before tonight. I have texted my high schooler. I have texted my middle schooler. You know, the club gets canceled or something happens and you say, I'm going to pick up at this time, or Dad's coming at that time. You know, we shouldn't be doing that, but we totally get that it's convenient to be able to connect with your kids during the day. And so a lot of it is retraining us as parents too, in that we do have processes in school to be able to communicate with students. And sometimes we do something really quick and we realize it's really something that could have waited. But again, we're used to that instant communication as well. But I have noticed just with my middle schooler that there are no communications coming back during the day, whereas sometimes I get communication from my high schooler and I have to say, where are you? So, you know, put your phone away, you're in school. But I think that it's been a different experience at the two levels. And I'm going to talk a little about the social emotional impact on our students.
So everybody's kind of touched on quite a bit of pieces of this slide, and if you do read The Anxious Generation, which you should, it's a great book, this will touch on, I'm going to give a very brief overview of these bullets, and this actually came from, obviously, my notes when I originally read The Anxious Generation for our book study. So, distraction from learning, right? It's the constant feeling of the need to check your phone for every notification, no matter what it is, but just wanting that instant check-in on their phone. Diverts their attention from class, which lowers their participation and engagement, whether that's in the moment they're on their phone, sneaking it, or if they're leaving the class to then go check their phone. And that decreases to academic success. The over-reliance on the internet weakens our critical thinking skills. It also, in extreme cases, can lead to academic dishonesty. The cyberbullying, we're seeing a lot, as Mr. Lee said, and if it's not your child being cyberbullied or being a cyberbully, it's just that they are witnessing it 24/7. They are witnessing it and getting desensitized to the idea of just commenting negatively or with judgment or with harsh words online. the access to that. It does lead to social isolation. I understand that in tough times like COVID, having phones is great, FaceTime's awesome, that we all rely on that to connect with others, but really the way teens are using it today, it's actually isolating them from their peers, and their communication skills are decreasing. Their conversation for face-to-face conversation skills are decreasing. It hinders their development for empathy and for having those face-to-face conversations. I know I get a ton of emails from students that look exactly like a text they'd send their friends. It's just riddled with grammar and slang that I don't always understand. When they're constantly only talking via technology, they're not really able to read, they don't have the skill set yet to read tones of text messages, or they're not able to decipher certain messages from people, which is leading to an increase of negative interaction or anxiety over deciding if a message is positive or negative, because they just don't have the skill to decipher that. It leads to a lot of confusion. As far as mental health, we talk a lot about this, but it is, in the book we'll talk about this with graphs, and the visuals are amazing. Just an increase in anxiety, symptoms of anxiety and depression. Social media often leads us to compare ourselves to other people, and it's not reality, which is really hindering self-esteem in teens. Sleep disturbance is a huge one, screen time before bed, throughout the day, and we know that sleep is a basic need, so if your sleep is off, a lot of everything else is going to be thrown off. Another thing this book talks about, and we've seen, is just the idea of instant gratification and how harmful that is for honestly anyone to have. I think that these kids are having that dopamine dependency, and they're having a reduction in patience. They have lower distress tolerance skills, and we're really seeing a lot of mood swings when their reality is not matching the fast-pacedness of what a phone can do for them. So when something in real life is taking longer, or it's not at the speed that they are wanting, it's really leading to the kids being emotionally dysregulated. I just said a lot of really kind of negative, scary things, and I think the book does raise our anxiety quite a bit. I know I'll be honest, page 17, I deleted the two social media apps I have. Like, it really was shocking. However, what I did love about the book and things that we've talked about today is also just a reminder that it's newer for this generation, and we really just have to be mindful and knowledgeable, and that there are ways to help our students, guide them in making the right decisions. I think about looking out throughout history, right? Like, I think everyone was frightened when Google came out, and that was a new thing, but really, right, like, a lot of people rely on Google now. It's a great thing for a lot of reasons. So just remembering that as you're reading this book, the therapist in me just wants you to take a deep breath and remember that there is positive outcomes if we're just doing the things that we can to help our kids.
Thank you. And I think the importance, back to what Mr. Walker was saying about just having those open conversations. And I know they will tell you that you can cringe and, you know, they're going to kind of blow you off and roll their eyes at you, but they are listening. And what we know about our students and us as adults is they need multiple reminders. So just like they need multiple reminders to empty the dishwasher and clean their rooms, we have to talk about it often. And it's okay to say, you know, I don't understand what that is, or I'm scared about that, or this is what I'm scared about. And they may say that's, you know, you're being ridiculous or you're being overprotective, but that's, you know, part of our job as parents is to make those tough decisions that sometimes makes them upset with us. And so that's a good segue into potentially making some stricter restrictions here in our schools. So I think what we're going to do is we do want to be able to answer questions if you have questions about anything that was shared. I think what I'll do first is just share with you the task that we're going to have you do at the end so you know kind of where we're going, and then we'll open up for any questions. As I said, our Board of Education is going to be looking into policy around cell phone use for our students and having a distraction-free environment in our schools. So we're ultimately looking to have some feedback. So we've created for you a beautiful continuum on the windows over there. And you'll also see to the far right a parking lot. So that's just things that maybe don't fit on the continuum, but you're worried about, you have questions about, you want us to follow up on. So you really want more training on something, or can we have a parent group on something else? That can go on your Post-it note, go right up on that parking lot. On your table, you have some sticky dots, some little stickers of different colors. And we're going to ask you to take some time to think about what would an appropriate distraction-free environment look like in your child's really in their secondary school, so we're looking at grades 6 through 12. We're not looking to get less restrictive, so we're not looking to add any additional access to personal technology at the K through 5 level or the 6 through 12 level. So you've kind of heard where we are. We're looking at if we were going to add to any of these, we're going to continue where we are, no phones or wearables K through 5, continue the bell-to-bell exclusion at 6 through 8, and we're not going to say, well, now we're going to allow phones during class time, so we don't allow that right now. That's kind of one of our boundaries. So we're starting there, but from there, we want to know there's a few things that we have to answer. So we could be the far left of our continuum in the red there is no phones allowed in the school building. Okay, that's pretty restrictive. So no phones coming in. Some schools out there across the country have tried to do that. Away from that, if you start moving towards the orange level down the continuum, you have the phones locked away during the school day bell to bell. So that's locked in their lockers or locked in, there's tech pouches that they actually have for this purpose that they would be locked away during the day, stored, and then picked up at the end of the day. They have, from there, we have similar to what we have right now, a little less restricted than that. Phones are often away during the school day, bell to bell. So this is similar to what we have at middle level. Within that, we have to decide if the students have that on their person, and it's often away. Do they go in the clear pouches? Do they keep them in their backpacks? And then from there, even a little less restrictive, should they be allowed to use them in the hallways at lunch during passing time? So lots of different things out there. So you can see right now, it's kind of where we are with the high school. If you go to the end there, the phones are often away during instructional time, but they're allowed to access them during passing time, during lunchtime, during study halls. Okay, so that's kind of the less restrictive part. If I was going through this just to model, I would take my sticky and I would go over and I would just place it anywhere on the paper that I'm in agreement with. So I might come over and say, I'm done with the phones. I'm putting it right here. Phones are left at home and they're on their own. Phones are in a tech pouch. They're locked away during the day, bell to bell. Phones are often away in their backpacks or in phone hotels, we like to call them. If you don't know what those look like, those are the shoe caddies, basically, that are clear. So they put them in there so they can't actually touch them. Yes, question?
But that is today, that is current, right? That's no change, basically.
This, yes, so they would be often away during the day, but no access to them. No access during, so then you would come here and say, this is kind of more, this is, I would say, we're in middle school, currently what you've heard at middle school. This is at high school, they're gonna be often away during the day, except I think they should be allowed to use them at lunch, or I think they should be allowed to use them in the hallway, and somewhere in between. We know people like to go kind of towards the edges or things like that. If you have something else you want to add to this and you feel like, yes, but I want to say more, you can write it on your Post-it, you can put it anywhere around the outside. If you have more questions or, what would training look like, things like that, you can always put things in the parking lot as well.
I have one question.
Yes.
So that doesn't differentiate the levels. This would be across all levels. If you put the
We're looking for something for grades 6 through 12.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Yes, so, right, so K through 5, again, if you say you have something else you'd like to add to the K-5 level, that can go right in the parking lot, anywhere it doesn't fit. We want all of the feedback that we can get. What else? Oh, good, questions. Go ahead.
So are you trying to say the rules are going to be the same for 6 to 12? Right now they're not.
The rules right now, the question was, would the rules be the same 6 through 12? If you feel like you think it should be different at middle school and high school, you should note that up there. Okay, because we don't exactly know what the rules would be, so the policy could be different middle school, high school.
Also, like if we wanted distraction to be at high school, how would that be possible? That's not even using their lockers.
But they might need to use their lockers if that's what we decide. Maybe they can put their coats in there too, so they wear their coats when they leave. I don't understand what the no locker thing is.
Do we know of any schools successfully that able to
get rid of phones in school?
So we do have information from Monroe County principals. Stop me if I'm wrong, Melissa. Almost no schools have done a bell-to-bell. I do believe Greece schools have done.
They've done the pouches.
They've done the pouches. Now they can turn in the pouches, I believe, before they walk in the building, and then they go through a detector that detects if they still have a phone on them.
There are 2 other districts that are looking currently at a no phone, bell-to-bell, no phone throughout the day, all day. They're the only 2. Most everyone is looking at some sort of middle ground like we currently have.
So most looking at like during instructional time and then some access during the day. Yes.
So I have a question. So if Coco does and now it does development, then what is it happening? So it doesn't matter what we say, it's still another check.
Right, so some of what we are hearing is that we could have the governor say, and it gets approved in the budget, that all schools are bell to bell, including lunch and study hall, and it's just up to the schools to decide where phones are stored, how they're stored, things like that. So that would be the decision point. We just know that sometimes what we hear on the media isn't exactly what comes to us in writing, so we're hesitant to say we know what that's going to look like, and we may not have a choice, and we may have to follow that exactly as it's stipulated, which would really be a problem. But if we have some choice, we want to be able to have some feedback and understanding of where families are. Yes.
The costs and risks of phone use I think are compelling. I'm curious in your studies, and this goes for anybody who's been reading the book and discussing it. Are there compelling arguments that you've seen for sticking with the status quo? Like, what is the most compelling argument for not restricting things further?
I would say, talking with other superintendents, the biggest concern has been around the physical safety and parents wanting to be able to communicate with their child if something's happening in the building. So that is one of the things that keeps coming back. I would say the number 2 would be the daily things of parents and students wanting to be able to connect during the day to say, can I have the car after school? Can you pick me up? Your doctor appointment's changed. Just that, people being used to that convenience and being able to send the 20-second text. So I'd say those are the 2 most compelling that I've heard within the county system around why people are going to resist the cell phone change.
Well, that's a lot of the reason why bringing this to our parent guardian community is so important, because it really is the parent piece, and our national data shows us that a lot of the communication that happens during the day is with parents.
Be careful.
One of the things, though, within our research, what we've seen, because we are all worried about a worst-case scenario in our schools and being able to communicate with our children. What we know is that every child in a building, if there were a worst-case scenario, physical threat in a building, it's much more unsafe for every child in that building to have a phone and be using that phone to communicate whatever it is with their families or friends or whatever, than to have them not have that access and have the adults in the building still be following their safety protocols and practices that we've been training on and learning about and working with the police and FBI on for years. So if there really were an emergency situation, we need our phone lines open, we need our cell space open, and we need to be able to communicate with families in an appropriate way. And we don't want every child focused on reaching out to home. I know it's a hard thing as a parent because you want that immediate text that everything's okay from your child, but that actually can cause a really chaotic situation in an emergency. Yes.
Is there not a technical solution to jam the signals, which of course you can then release in an emergency?
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Is there not a technical solution to jam the signals so you don't get a reception? And then if you have an emergency, you can release that.
I see, so to jam the signal so students couldn't even use their phones.
Right, it wouldn't only be students, would it?
Right, exactly. Yeah, so that does cause other safety concerns if we were to just, it's actually one of our safety concerns is that, as many of you have been in our buildings know, we often struggle with cell signals, and so those of us who are being called to different situations that are maybe needing us imminently, sometimes we don't receive those right away, so that would be one way around it.
What we did, so the board started this conversation before the governor's conversation, so starting in September, and we did bring in our technology department to look at internally what are our capabilities to turn things on and turn things off. And there were too many workarounds where we couldn't necessarily turn everything off to prevent everything. So we went through the different scenarios. So there are some things that we can shut off for students, but not all students are logging in to our Wi-Fi either. So if they log into our Wi-Fi, then we can shut off everything. When they use their own cellular and not our Wi-Fi, it changes the schematics of what we can and can't do.
And when they use their VPNs.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing students will have on their phones are their VPNs, which the parents are paying for, just so you know, and they'll turn those on during the school day, which then allows them a workaround around the Wi-Fi. And at Mendon High School, we basically are a dribble thing. I know several of you whose kids, who you come to the school and see that. So they'll turn the VPN on and have that on throughout the day and use that as a workaround. They're very smart.
If you block the phone signal, the VPN's useless. If they don't have a way to connect, if it's only the school Wi-Fi which is connectable to, then you can control.
I would share a training that I did a couple of years ago. The opposite is actually desired in a true emergency situation. First responders, say a community incident, something like that, a health emergency, they will actually shut down cell towers, so only emergency signals. So kind of what you said, the opposite is what our first responders would want. So, for what it's worth.
My question is going to be about enforcement of both the current policies and potentially stricter policies, maybe best answered by our principals. The technological solutions are interesting, but just as far as teachers and staff enforcing the policies today and possibly next school year, how does it work? What are problems? Does it take staff time away from other work that needs to be done?
Yeah, so at the high school level, one of the things we work really hard at both high schools is buy-in, specifically from our staff. Because we know that if one staff member isn't following the procedures, it could put everyone else in a bad situation, right? So at the beginning of the school year, one of the things we actually spend time training our staff on are our procedures and practices, right? And they share best practices. We talk about how the phone caddies were not popular last year. We have seen a huge increase in them this year because teachers got up and said, here's what I do. This has worked for me. I have a no phone zone. There's a box that I tape on the floor. And once they get past that line, they know that's where the phone goes. Another teacher stood up and said, I tell them that's how I take attendance. If your phone's not in there, I've given you number 12. I don't think you're here for the day. So we have teachers that do best practice. We revisit it throughout the year to figure out what's working, what's not working. And every year we come back together as an instructional leadership team and have that conversation of what are the tweaks we need to make. We're always investing a little bit more money into different strategies and techniques. That's why we went full bore and bought everybody a phone caddy the second year. We are also using small tricks like phone chargers. So we will go out and buy the $3 phone charger at Five Below. Teachers will put them in the back of the room, and that's called a charging station. And kids will never let the phone die, so they'll plug it in for the period in the charging station, and the phone's off and out of their hands. But in addition to that, when the student does have the phone out, it's a warning in the classroom. The second time, they will get written up. The third time, and there's a phone call home to families or an email home to families. The third time, it goes to administration. After that administration, the assistant principals work on different strategies with students as to what the best situation is. We have taken phones and they live in our phone hotel vault at the Mendon High School office for several days. We have connected with families and say, please don't let your child bring a cell phone for a few days because this is what we've seen. So it does take everybody being on the same page, and we've been really good about getting everyone on the same page because no one wants to be that one outlier that's like, no, go ahead and use the phone. And then they sort of are putting their colleagues in a bad position. I hope that answered your question.
And so I think that's part of the work that has to be done. So there's uniformity between and across our schools. First offense, if it's out, it's a warning. Second offense is the phone's taken away and it's a parent call. Third offense, maybe detention, etc. So a progressive type discipline. The other thing is that's if the phone's out. But if the phone is out and the students are using it for some of the things you saw up here, which they do, if they're using their phone to send a text message that's bullying, and it's not as much as you have your phone out. Now we're dealing with multiple issues.
I'll add a little from the middle school point of view, because I don't know if anybody has middle schoolers in here, but they're making mistakes daily because that's how they learn and that's how they grow. So that we learn very similar to what Melissa said. First time, the teacher is in charge of the classroom. They might be away, but the first event comes down to the office and we have that discussion because it's like. Again, a parent of a new driver, I just didn't hand him the keys and said, see ya. There was a lot of opportunity, there was a lot of talking, there was a lot of steps. So we want to make sure that, do you know why this is a big deal? Do you know why it's important that you not have your phone in class? Do you know it's a distraction to you, to others, to teachers? And we go through that. The second offense, we make a parent come in and pick up the phone, and then we have that discussion with the parent. And that is usually the end of it. We do start out the beginning of the year at every grade level. Spending a lot of time on this discussion, either grade level or teams, depending on the year, with all the teachers present, with Mr. Felser, my assistant principal, myself. I know they do this over at Parker, where we really hammer down those expectations. So it's not a surprise when it becomes something. So, but that's a great question. I appreciate that.
Yes, and just to follow what Superintendent Pirro said, that's the really important work that comes after, really laying the groundwork with a policy and then following up with what's the common training every student's going to get at 6 through 8 and 9 through 12. So it's not up to the buildings to have to come up to this, and it doesn't matter which side of the district you live on, what the consequences are, that everything's going to be the same. It's going to be very clear for students and for families, the purpose and what will happen if we're not following whatever the decision is that we make. Okay, yeah.
So coming out of this meeting, we're gonna have our inputs, assuming some of the input is conflicting, and then we don't hear anything from our governor, how is the final decision going to be made by the Board of Education and representing parents?
Yes, good question. So there will be conflicting feedback. This evening we've had conflicting feedback from every area that we can. So it's really up to the Board of Education to take all the information, all the data that they have, and make a decision and be able to share that. Certainly if the governor makes a decision that's separate from that, then we'll work from there, but a policy would need to be created either way. Certainly all the feedback is important, or there may be so much conflicting feedback that the board says, well, now we need something else, we need a focus group, so this is kind of a beginning point, and if more feedback's needed. But we know that there'll be conflicting feedback for all the reasons that we shared.
Shada, the other thing I would add is just because there's a policy doesn't mean a policy can change. So I think anytime there's a first type of policy like this, everyone is understanding that we may need to be flexible and adjust it along the way. The board's done that with other policies. We're also doing a lot of benchmarking within the county, Monroe 1 and 2. So with Fairport, Penfield, Brighton, making sure we're all similar. We're in the same kind of ballpark relative to what this could look like for us.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to try and keep it brief because I know we're rushed, but I have one just observation, which is this is all great, but we need to lead by example. And I go to meetings and concerts, and all of the adults there are like this. So if we don't want our kids to be on our phones, we have to be mindful of that. My second thing is at the high school level, I don't want to throw teachers under the bus, but it's very inconsistent, where some teachers are using parking lots and some are not. So as a parent, my daughter is horrified that I'm I want to email to say why is this happening in the class? And she's horrified. So what should we do as a parent if we know it's a problem?
Thank you so much for that. I think it's so important that we do model for our children at home and as adults at school around using devices. So yes, it is hard because our kids don't want us to be around and be involved, but if there's something that's concerning in your child's classroom, or something that's happened to them, or something on social media, or even something that's happened in a neighborhood that you think is impacting them in school, please reach out and tell us.
It's not necessarily that, I just know there are a couple teachers that do not enforce cell phones,
Okay.
and it's very distracting. It's a problem.
Yeah, I would
And
reach
I don't
out.
wanna like get someone in trouble, but at the same time, like, I didn't realize it was truly a policy, I didn't know that, which is why I'm glad I came tonight. I did not realize that they're not supposed to have them out during instruction. So there are classes where it is.
Yeah, it's our,
Okay, so just to differentiate between a practice and a policy. Right now, there is not a policy.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to talk about tonight, to get some information. What Melissa and Josh shared is their practice in their middle schools that are evolving. What the policy does is it makes it clear that there isn't the choice for individual teachers at all, or for students or for families. It's a policy, it's a rule that everyone should follow.
certainly if you feel like there's something that's really distracting happening in your child's class, just reach out either to the teacher to clarify what's happening, to the administrator so they can, they're not gonna walk in and say, Sarah's mom called and said, yes,
Sorry,
next question.
just quick clarifying points to that as well. So when I'm in open house, there are teachers who have said, we'll tell them to pull out their phone or their one-on-one device, right? So it is inconsistent. So if I'm trying to control my child and say, you can't take your phone to school, my child will be like, well, my teacher says I can use it in class, or I need it in class, right? So that, I think, is the problem, is when the teachers are giving inconsistent messages. Parents can't be like, well, you can't have your phone right now, because then they're like, well, I can't do my schoolwork, right? So my question is, will this change, the wording change for teachers to say, pull out your school-provided device instead of your phone?
So at the high school level, part of the reason why we have allowed students to use their phones is because up until this year, seniors weren't part of the one-to-one rollout. Seniors finally became one-to-one rollout, which meant we were asking the seniors from 9th, 10th, 11th grade and then to use their own device or to use their phone. And it was easier for teachers sometimes to say, rather than boot up your computer, grab your device and log in, sign in, and do the research you need to do. This year, the 12th grade laptops came in, and they are not great. So it's still sometimes easier to use the phone, but the 9th, 10th, and 11th graders are being trained that they are to use their one-to-one device. They will say the 9th grade class is the best we've ever seen at using their one-to-one device, because the middle schools have done an amazing job of pushing them in that direction. They really have. I will give credit where credit is due. Those middle school folks, good job.
We have just 1 minute left. We want to stick to our hour time frame, so we can take a couple very quick questions. I just wanted to make sure that you have time before we really do want every single person's feedback. So please, if you can, we're really looking for the colored sticky dot to end up somewhere on our continuum. If you want to add anything else, like yes, but this, or I don't want that, stick that right up on the continuum where you feel it's appropriate. And then other pieces, questions, comments, training questions, things that you want more resources about, please put that in the parking lot item, and we'll do the best we can to gather all of that and follow back up with you via email. Okay. Yes, Ruth?
Can you say once more, what's the difference of these?
You can use any color that you would like.
Oh.
We didn't want to ruin them all by cutting them all up. You can use whatever speaks to you.
Shane, this gentleman's going to say that for a while.
Yes, go ahead.
Are dumb phones detrimental?
Dumb phones are not as detrimental.
Do they sell the phones where parents still want the convenience, but it's not addictive, it's annoying?
They are starting to sell more and more of those phones where they actually have to go back to the T9 texting.
To two
Yes.
different age groups.
Yeah,
Teenagers
let's do it.
and older folks. They are falling in love back with the.
They're all flip phones.
I love that flip phone.
Yes, last question.
I know this is going to make you sound really ignorant, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad I don't know what's a wearable.
Oh, a wearable, thank you, is the smart watches, which some kids use for their running and statistics and sleeping and all that, but they also get their text messages and can respond to each other and do all of that as well. Yes, thank you so much. That was a lot of information. Thank you all. So we are here. So if you have questions personally, please come up and share them. Please, if you are interested in borrowing one of our books, please do and pass it along. If you want to return them back to district office or to your child's school, we'll make sure they get routed within the district. And thank you so much, all of you, for being here. And thank all of you. Anyone who wasn't able to be here this evening, this will be posted online. And we really appreciate your questions, your engagement, and all of your feedback. Thank you so much.